Welcome everyone again to another episode of the JR&Skipps podcast, a podcast where we break down what we see during the week, give you our hot takes on viral moments in sports, entertainment, and every other thing that caught our attention. Don't forget to like and subscribe, follow us on all social platforms, and shout out to my co-host Skips. Let's go.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro, JR. So, as we expect, we're going to start with the biggest topic of the weekend, and that's Arsenal's big win. So what you're saying, basically saw Arsenal go 1-0 up in
On
about,
their way to the win, right?
come on, man. It doesn't matter how we got there. The fact is, in the 83rd minute, we see Bossard, drop a nice banger into the West Ham net, and then just we
A
thinking,
deflected banger.
deflected banger, smooth banger, straight banger, whatever you want to call it, is a Bossard banger. So, Bossard drops the banger into the net, and, we're all happy thinking that that is the end, but we didn't know that there was a huge surprise coming for us at the end of the
Exactly.
game. So let's quickly touch upon I think that's the most important part of the game, so let's just go right there. In I think the 94th, 95th minutes of the game, so West Ham have a corner, and then Callum Wilson has the ball cross over the line very narrowly. And West Ham think they've drawn the game, and they've earned 1 point considering the serious issues they're having in relegation. And then the decision sort of goes into VAR, and VAR eventually cancels the goal. So nice win for Arsenal. What are you saying in terms of the VAR decision, JR?
I think it was the right call. Obviously, you can't impede the goalkeeper.
Agreed.
Fair enough. I think it was the right call. I think my only gripe with it is I don't think VAR has been consistent throughout the entire season, and I think you could see with the reaction from so many people online. I mean, aside from like the obvious haters of Arsenal and all that, I think in there's still like a serious conversation to be had, right? What is the limit of physical contact in the opposition box? I understand if it's one thing if it's the players that are grappling, the strikers or the attackers of the opposing team trying to get the best of the other team's defenders. But my own view is once you make contact or you get physical or rough with the goalkeeper in any way, form to put him off or to give yourself an unfair advantage, I think in every situation that should always be a foul. But you and I know rightfully that has not been the case in some moments across the season. And we can go back to the first game of the season, Arsenal versus Manchester United, right? So many people alluded to it by end of being weak. I mean, in the moment, then yes, you could say it's a soft call, but like I said, my belief is once you make physical contact with the goalkeeper, try to impede him or put him off in any way, I think it should be a foul. Soft, yes, but I think that's the way it should go. So, right call. Bring it back to the Arsenal game. I think it was the right call. I know for a few seconds there, some of my Arsenal fans were already, thinking not again.
Bro.
Some
Bro,
haters were
to
really
be honest,
celebrating.
yeah.
Yeah.
When the goal went in, because I was watching the game with one of my homies. When the goal went in, I was just like, damn, it's really over. Then I stood up, I took a walk, came back, then I saw the whole VAR shenanigans. And then the good thing was when I saw his hand was across Raya's neck, I didn't even see he was holding Raya's hand at that point. So I was still a bit 50-50 that, maybe they were going to cancel it. But then when they sent the ref to the monitor, at that point, then I saw his hand was actually holding David Raya's hand. I'm like, oh my days, man, look at us getting
Oh,
lucky.
it's a clear foul. It's a clear
Yeah,
foul.
it's a clear foul. And honestly, I've drank a lot of tears since the Arsenal West Ham game because I've had a lot of people complaining, calling Arsenal cheats here and there. But I could care less, man. All I know is 2 more games, Premier League title in the bag. The Netflix shenanigans ends, then we could sort of find who's the new Netflix. So I really can't wait to have this sort of conversations. But as I said, 2 more games and let's see how it goes.
For the
I think
first
there's
time
some
in
other.
your adult years, you're already bringing up your chest. Please, 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 please,
Bro,
please, please,
I
please,
could
please, please,
care
please.
less, man. It's been a long time coming. 20 years, no Premier League title. So, if we eventually do it, trust me, Arsenal fans are going to have a lot to say. And as I said, I've been drinking a lot of tears, man. Like, I'm so fed on tears, to be honest. But, let's see how much tears I can drink to the end of the season. So let's quickly touch on Arteta's tactics in the game. One of the highlights was the Ben White injury. And then after that, Arteta sort of tried to overthink it by sending Declan Rice to the right back position. And in my opinion, I think that was a point where we actually lost control of the midfield because it kind of felt like West Ham started growing more confidence in the game. And honestly, I was like, oh shit, we're about to bottle this game. But then in the second half, when I saw Mosquera come on and then Calafiori went out, I'm like, okay, I think Arteta sort of understand that was a mistake in the first place. Sort of try to correct. He put Rice in the eighth and he has made it in the sixth, then sends Kelly to the
Mm-hmm.
left back position. Anything you want to add to that in terms of Arteta overthinking it?
Um, I think this is not the first time he's experimenting with having his central midfielder step into the right back position. I think we saw it with Thomas Partey when he was still playing for Arsenal. I think
Yep.
there obviously has to be like a tactical reason why he feels whoever occupies that pocket of space, should be able to adapt to playing from the right and maybe going back into that same familiar area, which is the central midfield when Arsenal tried to press up front. So I think there's a little bit of logic to why he wanted Rice to play there. But to your point, it was such a high stake game, and maybe that was not the time for such an
Agree.
expensive gamble. And thankfully, he had time to rectify it, and it
Yep.
wasn't. It didn't cost you guys something. So yeah, I think sometimes in these high pressure moments, we tend to overthink, and these coaches are not any different. So yeah.
Yeah, just to add one more thing to what you said, I think one of the reasons why he likes to use that central midfielder and the right back position is because he's trying to overload the midfield. Because the way the
Okay.
right back plays in Arsenal, you're basically inverting. And so if you basically have a midfielder inverting into the midfield, it's sort of, you're in your natural position. But then you
Exactly.
still need to have the tendencies to be able to defend when the opportunity comes to do that. So I think good points in terms of explaining Arteta's thought process on the tactical approach.
Mhm.
However, let's quickly touch on the Arsenal captain Martin Odegaard. There's been a lot of comments about Odegaard this season. I personally have had a lot to say in terms of his underwhelming performances throughout the season. It's
Mhm.
fair to say he's had an injury-struck campaign, but I don't think that's an excuse because honestly, Martin Odegaard has been really subpar, and we Arsenal fans expect to see a lot better from him in terms of what we've seen so far this season. However,
Okay.
I do think his introduction into the game sort of changed the game, and in my opinion, I think the movement he had and the passes that he provided, especially the assist to Leandro Bossard, which basically won us the 3 points on the day. I think that was a very important tinkering from Arteta and bringing in his captain for the last 20 minutes. Anything you want to add to that in terms of Odegaard's performance in the Arsenal West Ham game?
I think it was a flat performance. I'm sorry, but yeah, to your point, I think at that point in the game, where West Ham were a little bit sat deep and trying to grind out a win, it made sense to probably bring in someone like Odegaard, who's
Yeah,
comfortable in tight spaces.
yep,
And
agreed.
I think we saw that, like you said, with how he didn't have the instinct to probably blast the ball or look for the next man when he provided the assist for Trossard, who got the lucky deflection and took it past the goalkeeper. But yeah, bounce aside, I think Odegaard had a regular game. I don't know what you mean by change the game because when he
Change
came,
the game.
wh- to be fair, history only remembers the victors. So yeah, to your point,
Fact.
what we're going to remember from the game is Odegaard providing the
Odegaard came in, dropped the
winning
assist,
assist. So
game
yeah,
done.
so in that regard, you can say yes, he changed the game. But what I was saying overall was I think his introduction didn't really affect the type of game we were seeing prior to his introduction. Is what I'm just basically trying to say. It was a very tight game from tight tactical setup from Nuno's team. I think Arteta was also trying to be cautious, not give away too much, and also you have Raya to thank for keeping the game level, even though Odegaard was in when he made that fantastic stop by from Matheus
Bro,
Fernandes. So
I,
I would say big ups to Arsenal for hanging in there till they had a chance to put the game to the sword. But yeah, I guess
yeah.
at the business end of the season, all you need is just results. So keep on going, I guess.
Yeah, I think you touched on a very important point there in terms of Raya save. And honestly, man, I can't count how many times Raya saved us. And if you remember, there was a diving header by the one of the West Ham striker. That was another fantastic save. So that's two saves
Exactly.
made by Raya that basically safeguarded the points for Arsenal.
Hmm.
So let's quickly touch on just still on the VR decision. What we've seen in the social media so far is, Arsenal have benefited from physical football, blocking keepers, defenders during corners and set pieces. And for whatever reason, we sort of benefited from the VR decision, indicating that, our keeper was blocked. Honestly, I really just see that as more tears from Arsenal haters, but
Of course, it will be more
yeah,
tears to the shoes on the other foot, right?
agreed. Till then, I have to say.
Which,
Okay,
which which brings me back to the overall point about the inconsistency with the Premier League
yeah,
we're playing. Like, I don't think it's Arsenal benefiting because I believe sometimes it just randomly goes against any other thing. I'm not of the idea that there's this conspiracy to affect one particular team or not. I just feel like the level of refereeing is inconsistent, and we will continue to have these incidents. And it's sad that a title decider and a relegation battle as well had to be decided by the referee's interpretation of physicality in the box. And to your point, Arsenal have benefited from tactics like this in the past, and I don't really put the blame on Arsenal or try to call them a corner physical merchant team as online fans like to make us believe. I just think whatever is allowed within the limits of the law, right? Any top team is within their fair right to try and exploit it, and that's what Arsenal have been doing for the past 2 seasons, right? I remember when they used to tell Arsenal fans and players
that we
to
were weak. Yeah,
they're weak and they need to be tougher, and people like to just kick
now
Arsenal
it's
players around for fun. So it's just ironic how it has become. So yeah, big ups to Arsenal, I guess, for adding that. What would I say?
reality.
That weapon to their Arsenal.
Yeah, that weapon. Okay, no pun intended. I like that. Okay, I think that's been a good touch up in terms of the Arsenal game. So let's quickly go into the other games in the Premier League. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's fair to say that top four is pretty wrapped up based on the
Okay.
Liverpool versus Chelsea draw. Who could actually make the Champions League? I think it's only possibly Bournemouth that has a chance because Aston Villa have two more games to go, and
Okay.
then they're playing Liverpool and Manchester City.
Mm.
So if we're being serious, they could possibly lose the Liverpool game. I'm not sure if it's home and away, but that's a game they could possibly lose. And
Okay.
then if you're talking about the Manchester City game, they might also want to rest their players for the Europa League final. So just maybe they also lose that game. And then if they were to lose those two games, that sort of opens the road for Bournemouth, but that would mean Bournemouth has to beat Manchester.
Win and win both of their games as well, right?
Yeah,
So to
exactly.
your point,
So
it's pretty much locked up, but mathematically
yeah,
not settled yet. But yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I
so
agree with
let's
you.
see if
Yeah.
the end of the season throws up any surprises. But
Any
if Iraola
surprises?
could
Yeah.
find his way into the Champions League, I have to say that would be
Mm.
a fantastic season for him. And
Super,
just
super, super.
maybe, yeah, so just maybe he gets a Chelsea job based on his performance, even though the news in the media now is linking Xabi Alonso to the job. But
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. Um,
Yep.
Quickly touching on the Man U Sunderland game. From
Okay.
my understanding, that was a very bold draw. So I'm just gonna transfer that to you. Anything you want to
Yeah.
add to the Man?
Um, I think that's what happens, when you achieve your quote unquote targets for the season with a couple of games to go. You're able to take some risk and have other reasons to field certain players, and I think that's what Michael Carrick did by starting Mazwari, Zegzi, Mount. These are players that are quote unquote fringe players, and some of them might be looking to move on. So I think it was a case of the coach just trying to give them a run out, probably increase their sale value,
Five, yeah,
and or,
yeah.
or see if they're able to contribute positively for the team next season, seeing as there will be more games needed to be played. So it was a nothing burger game, to be honest. I think basically that's what we are going to have for the remainder of the two games for the season. We'll probably see um, United field more of these French players, and just try to see if they could find a needle in a haystack, or is already a foregone conclusion with some of them that they need to be moved on to, for next season. So yeah,
Um, to be honest, I think Curry can actually do that because he basically have third place locked up. So
exactly,
there's
exactly.
there's nothing to lose. So why not see if there are players that you can probably use for your squad next season, or players that you want to get rid of, and as you
Yep,
said, still value in the transfer market.
exactly.
Just before we wrap up on our sports section, let's quickly touch on the relegation battle.
Mm.
So West Ham lost yesterday, and they were just 1 point below Spurs, and basically Spurs had to win to sort of seal their place in the Premier League. But then they sort of drew with with Leeds United
They
today.
did. There was a
So
good.
yeah, they played Leeds United today and they drew. I understand Matthias Tell scored the goal, and
Yeah.
then had like a bicycle kick that cost a penalty for Leeds. So he gave away the penalty, which was converted by Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Good
Lewin,
season for
yeah.
him, to be honest. He scored a reasonable amount of goals. So
Yeah.
from what we can see, though, it's just 2 points now separating Spurs and West Ham. And the interesting thing is Spurs is playing Chelsea next, and
Whoa.
West Ham is playing Newcastle next. So
Whoa.
just maybe we see a swing in the relegation battle next season in terms of, do Chelsea beat Spurs and West Ham beat Newcastle? I think it's going to be a very difficult game for West Ham to actually beat Newcastle, but it's the Premier League.
I'll be
Eh,
Newcastle have been having a stinker of a
a
season as
torrid,
well.
torrid season,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So you
West
just
Ham
never
have a
know.
chance.
Maybe
Yeah, yeah.
I'm telling you, based on what I've seen from them and what they displayed in the Arsenal game, even though it was really a back the boss approach and hit on the counter, I won't be surprised if they could scrape something against Newcastle. And honestly, I just want Spurs to end up in the championship. So let's see how that goes. And I'm hoping, as we said, the season ends with Arsenal lifting the trophy and Spurs in the championship. JR, anything you want to add to this section before we call it a day?
Um, no, just gonna say once again, big ups to Arsenal for doing what they needed to do. Get the results. Big ups to Spurs for getting the crucial points that seemingly gives them a little bit of room in the relegation battle, right? Long may
Yeah.
their suffering continue, but I don't think a club like Spurs should be relegating. So, and I actually want West Ham to be relegated because they have one or two nice players,
You want to
It'd be
snap?
nice.
Yeah. Are you
It'd be
thinking
nice.
Bowen?
And not Bowen Bow. I'm talking about Matheus Fernandez. He's such a fine player. If you
Oh,
watch
okay.
him, young
But you
22
got
years
we
old.
got Bruno though. Isn't that the same position? It's a 10, yeah?
Oh no. Yeah, no, he's a eight type
Eight.
of
Okay.
eight six type of player, right? So he basically sits beside a Kobe Menu and kind of like a Adam Watson or Elliot Anderson type of player.
Oh, okay. I must
Yeah,
have misread his profile then.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
okay. All right, so good stuff then. And once again, thanks everyone for joining this week's episode of the JR&Skipps podcast.
Yeah.
It's a podcast where we touch on music and sport events from the previous week. And please remember to click the subscribe button and, follow us on the social media platforms. Once again, it's JR_Skipps on Twitter, JR_Skipps on TikTok, and JR_Skipps_ podcast on Instagram.
Sharp.